Okay, everybody, welcome. We don't have a huge crowd this evening. I think basically we'll be talking to ourselves on the camera, so people will be able to view this remotely at some point. But at any rate, I'm Jay Bykowski, the chair of the Stockbridge Finance Committee, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for your interest in joining us this evening at our Baby Town meeting. And this meeting, as has been the custom, really serves as an introduction to the annual town meeting on May 16, which is a week from tonight at 6:30 p.m., where the items presented on the agenda this evening will be those that are presented at the annual town meeting, ultimately for vote by the public, by those in attendance. And at this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce our Finance Committee and thank them for their continued participation, interest, dedication throughout the year on the financial matters that come before our town. Bill Vogt, Neil Holden, Jim Balfans, Steve Schatz, Diane Roos, and Pam Boudreau. And again, I'm Jay Bykowski. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank our town administrator, Michael Canales, who keeps us on the straight and narrow, and his superb staff for their exemplary efforts on behalf of our town, as well as our select chair, Roxanne McCaffrey, Selectman Chuck Cardillo, and Selectman Patrick White for their continued leadership, their collegial support, working relationship with our committee, and their interest in positively doing things for our town. Now, our agenda this evening is going to deal with a couple of areas. I'm going to present a brief summation of the accomplishments of fiscal year 21. Those were published in the book a year ago. Actually, those will be published in the new book to be distributed. It's online. Bill Vogt told me just before the annual meeting, and then we're going to discuss the warrant articles that will be presented, as I mentioned, next week for a vote by the public. And it's important to note that the warrants have already been approved by the Select Board and the Finance Committee for the agenda for the vote next week by the town residents. So both groups have signed off on these. Okay, now basically we're going to have 5 sections tonight, and I'm going to take questions after each section. The first section is going to be a brief report of fiscal year 21. That's our last audited year. We're going to talk about our operating budget, educational budget, both operating and capital. Steve Schatz will talk about that. We have 5 high-profile articles, which I will present. We'll talk about how we spend our free cash. We'll talk about our sewer surplus and our water reserve surplus and community preservation allocation. So after each of those sections, I'll ask for questions if anybody has any, okay? Fiscal year 2021. The town exercised considerable discipline on following the adopted budgets. The tax rate in fiscal year 2021 was $9.78, which was a decrease of 9 years from the preceding year, 2020. And just FYI, for this year, fiscal year 22, the tax rate is $9.38. And we'll talk about fiscal year 23 after we go through all of the articles. The certified free cash balance fiscal year 2021 was 1.852 million. And at the annual town meeting, in an effort to minimize the tax levy, a number of these were dedicated for certain important purposes. 40,000 was dedicated for a planning and zoning professional consulting service, 35,000 for Stockbridge Bowl water testing consultants, 50,000 for OPEB, that's other post-employment benefits. That is not funded at this point. It's fully funded. We're one of the few towns in Berkshire County that fund OPEB, and we are funded per our actuarial firm, fully funded. 70,000 Ice Glen tree monitoring treatment, 95,000 for site monitoring and upgrade to the town's tennis and basketball courts, 135,000 for fully funding the Larrawag Bridge project. It's open, it's done, and it works, thank goodness. And we live right near there, Steve and I. So the traffic is off of Larrawag and off of Church Street. And basically, with those highlighted numbers, the remaining free cash in fiscal year 2021, which was certified, is 1.368 million. The total bond indebtedness in 2021 was 10,274,000. And the large expenditures, operating expenditures in that year included 3.72 million for the Berkshire Hills Regional School District assessment, $85,865 for the Berkshire Hills School capital, 600,000 that was approved for the Chime Tower restoration, 720,000 for pumps, the Park Street pump station replacement, 100,000 for funding our housing trust, affordable housing trust. More on that in a few minutes, and 38,000 for an engineering study for Tuckerman's Bridge. So basically, that's what the fiscal year 2021 looked like, and our committee does look forward very much to working with the town administration, with the select board, on further operating requests and reducing our debt as we go forward. Any questions on that at this point?
Jay, just, excuse me, one comment about 2021. We received what's called a management letter, which we get from our auditing firm every year. I think there are some nods in the audience from people who were familiar with that term. It was a clean letter. And I think it's important for the public to understand that this really
it's a clean audit.
It's a clean audit. It's a testament to the superb financial controls that our town administrator and treasurer have put in place, with the support, of course, of the Board of Selectmen. We had nothing to do with it, but
I think the important point that Steve is making is that the document is available online should you want to see it in further detail. At this point, I'm going to call on Steve Schatz to run through the town operating budget, educational Berkshire Hills Regional Education budget, and the capital Berkshire Hills Regional Education budget to be proposed for fiscal year 2023 next week. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. So, Mike, are you going to share get that up on the screen? While Mike Canales is doing that, let me just make a very brief comment about the operating budget. This is the Article 4 operating budget. It's where we spend most of our money. The amount of detail that goes into this is extensive, as you can imagine. I'm not going to go through every line item. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and we're going to be here all night if I were to start doing that. You agree, Ronnie? Okay. Thank you. The essential highlights of the budget are these. We're going to spend a little bit more than $800,000 more than we did last year. Of that amount, and I'm rounding these numbers off, of that, approximately half of that is attributable to increases in the education budget, which I will describe when I get to that section. The other important highlight for our operations last year, what we don't have is a P&L, but the P&L would show that our income over 2021 represented about a $750,000 increase, which was a bit of a surprise, I think, to everyone in a COVID year, but that's what we did. And that helped to offset a lot of expense. We've also paid down significant amounts and are reaching, in fact, the end of payments, principal payments on certain bond indebtedness. And I think, Mike, you're going to have something to say about that a little bit later on. So that's just by way of introduction. Most of the increase in the operating expenses, except for the education budget, are related to program increases in personnel costs, whether they are union negotiated or otherwise. We've made some personnel changes along the way, which have also resulted in increase. I shouldn't say we, but the town has made increases in certain costs for personnel. One of the principal ones is in the police department, where there will be an additional officer who will come on board after July 1st, once this budget goes into effect.
If I might interject one point on that, the reason for an additional police officer is the demands of the police force to deal with public health and psychologically related issues, which it takes people away from the actual criminal response. So our officers need to be trained in specifics. You see this in all the news, in all the papers. So that's the reason. Thank you.
So, I mean, that's probably the most significant single increase in the operating budget. There are a number of others. I mean, we're spending more money for emergency services, for ambulance. That's, I mean, it's a significant number. We're going to spend $294,000 next year for ambulance service for the town. That represents approximately a $26,000 increase over the previous year. It represents a very significant increase over the cost for ambulance service 5 years ago, when we were spending $8,700. There's a whole story behind that, but not worth telling tonight. So there is fuel costs have driven up operating expenses significantly. We have to keep, for our fire and police department, our highway department, we are spending significantly more in fuel. Our police department is, by the way, now purchasing hybrid vehicles. We're not yet doing that in the highway department, but that is something that is under consideration for the future, particularly for, the smaller sort of pickup style trucks. Let me see if there's anything else I want to mention here.
Information technology.
Yeah, there's some.
Which is always an issue.
Yeah.
And,
we're going to spend a little bit, we're going to spend Berkshire County Retirement Fund, about an additional $40,000, and that relates to the retirement of, the cost of retirement of town employees. As I said, the largest expense of all of the $800,000 increase, it's $833,000, is the $400,000 in expenses in the school department. And the school department expenses are, a couple of things have happened in the past couple of years. One, interestingly, Stockbridge is now sending 7 more children to our public school system, which was a bit of a surprise, given that Great Barrington's actually fell. Their enrollment fell, and that 7 costs us money. There's also a change in the funding formula, which the town agreed to at a town meeting 2 years ago.
2 or 3.
3 years? Yeah, it's a bit long. So our percentage of cost for the school system has gone up. It represents, in this case, it's part of that $400,000 increase. There's also changes in, or increases, I should say, in personnel costs for career, vocational, and technical education in the school department. Something which I think a lot of people have looked forward to seeing and is now happening. There's also increases in fuel expense and general increases in salaries that are programmed. But overall, the total expense, the increase in expense, plus the additional revenues that have come in the past year mean that the projected mill rate, because the mill rate has not been established yet, and is likely to be fairly modest. That doesn't mean that people won't complain about paying their taxes, but the mill rate, as a result of increases in the budget, those increases are not going to put a great deal of pressure on the mill rate. So that's all I have. I'm happy to the extent that I can, answer questions. Fortunately, Michael is here.
One question?
Come on up to the podium. Thank you.
Ira Golub, Stockbridge resident. I'm just curious, I noticed that your employee benefit expenses went down fairly significantly since 2019. I'm just curious what drove that decline.
The one thing that did go down was the OPEB, funding OPEB, because we are fully funded. And basically, our employee benefits retirement expenses have increased to some degree. And we also have a fund it's a contingency benefits fund should somebody retire midterm that we haven't planned for the retirement. It's in the expense breakout.
Thank you.
Okay. The other one quick point I would make on the education before we move on is the Berkshire Hills Regional School District has 271 choice students. And what that means in plain English is that if there's a vacancy in one of our schools, people can apply to go to the school from other school districts, which is fine. The only negative to that is that the school district is reimbursed $5,000 a head per the state. And that barely covers the cost when you look at the overall cost, which is somewhere in the vicinity of $30,000 a student. So it's interesting. And that's part of the situation with the increase. Any other questions on education or operating budget? Okay, if we might, we're going to move on to Article number 7. Article number 7 is a request for issuance of bonds for $4 million for a number of projects. Michael's going to put it up. The first of these is going to be the restoration of Tuckerman's Bridge. Tuckerman's Bridge is the bridge down by the golf course. The second is the restoration of the second Averick Road Bridge. There were 2 bridges on Averick Road. This is the second one. The third is the purchase of a fire engine A fire engine is quite expensive. We have applied for an $820,000 grant. We will not know till the end of the year if we get that grant or not. The next item is the replacement of the salt shed in the transfer station. And the last item of that borrowing of $4 million, issuance of bonds, is additional monies for the Park Street pump station, which basically, when we went out to get estimates, the estimates were higher than we originally budgeted for, which is very typical of construction if you've done any work around the house. So basically, that's what we have. We have an engine that's two of our three engines are outdated, and this is definitely a situation that has to be replaced from the standpoint of security of our town residents. That's Article number 7. Article number 8 is to vote for free cash, $250,000. That would be the additional monies needed for the replacement cost of the engine, which is about $1 million. We won't know if we get that grant, the monies would go back into free cash that were borrowed, but we won't know that until December, and we need to order. I'm going to take it in section, John. One sec. We won't know that until that time. So that's the engine. Article number 9, and then I'll come to you after I do two more, John, is the approval of $1.5 million authorized by the Berkshire Hills Regional School District to pay for a feasibility and schematic study for the Monument Mountain Regional High School. We pay a third of that, 32.1% of $481,800, okay? And Article 10 would be to create a stabilization fund to place $1.243 million into it to pay off the debt for the town office loan, offices for this building, and the water treatment plant, should the new regional high school be approved, so that we can free up that debt and then support that other project if the school project is approved by West Stockbridge and Great Barrington. And John, you had a question?
Yeah.
Come on up to the podium.
Oh, sorry. John Hart, Rattlesnake Mountain. I had a conversation with the town's highway superintendent, and he's very confident that the salt shed can be preserved. I don't know if he's come before you to see that it be replaced, but, you know, he said, you know, we'll do this, we can do that, and it's good. That's number one. Number two, Tuckerman Bridge, you said it was down near the golf course?
Yeah, it's the bridge that when you drive down past the golf course, there's a small bridge that goes over there's like a brook down there. And there are water and sewer services that are part of that bridge.
I've been living in another world as far as Tuckerman.
But it has to be replaced. It's been cited by the state.
And as far as the, you know, paying off the town hall, you kind of lumped that into something else. What is actually the cost of the payoff for town hall?
Do you know that, Michael? Michael will tell you.
Thank you.
Okay.
1 second.
We have, so in 2024, we have a payment of $434,000. 2025, we have $412,000, and then $395,000 in FY '26. So what we're proposing to do is set the money aside, so that if the school project happens, instead of continuing $400,000 in payments on those projects, we would pay that off take on the debt, which then would mitigate some of the cost of the new school hitting the budget.
I've got that. I'm just trying to get some handle on what this thing costs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As far as
The salt shed.
The salt shed was inspected by the building inspector, an independent engineer, and the fire chief, and it was condemned. So we were given 2 years to fix it. Now, some of those options could be, when we look at engineering, could be revitalization of that building itself. But right now, we're anticipating that we're gonna have to replace the whole thing.
Thank you.
Okay? Yes.
Ed Lane, 3 Willard Hill. With, historically, when the town has borrowed money, it's had some pretty favorable interest rates, but interest rates are becoming less favorable.
That's correct.
going forward. So 2 questions. One is, do we have an estimate as to the impact of the increased interest rates on the OPEB? Because that ought to reduce those costs. And secondly, the impact of increasing interest rates on borrowing. What sort of terms are we looking at for borrowing?
So we did ask Unibank that question, and the anticipation is that's our consultants that we use for borrowing. We anticipate that we can get under a 3% interest rate if we go out right after town meeting for borrowing. So we are trying to.
Over what term?
20 years. Yeah. As far as the OPEB, if interest rates are, right, we could have less of a return on the OPEB account itself. Right now, we're funded at 103%, and we'll have to see how that holds over the next year.
We're not funding it all in the future at this point. The actuaries,
Yeah.
right. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Okay, any other questions up to that point? Article number 11 is a quick one, basically to transfer monies from the cemetery trust fund to restore, preserve and repair the monument stones. So that's what that's all about. And Article number 12 deals with paying off existing debt by the year 2024 for a sewer system expansion update that was originally approved in 2002. Article 13 deals with using free cash to buy 2 mid-size plow and sander trucks of $340,000 for the highway department. Article 14 deals with purchase of a backhoe also for the highway department. Article 15 deals with using free cash for a Ford F-350. That's a large pickup truck. Article 16 is purchasing a highway department Bobcat articulating tool carrier. They do a lot of repair with respect to the infrastructure. 17 is a hydrological study of Campusa Bog, 50,000. Article 18, and this is all free cash. This is not borrowing. This comes from monies the town has on hand for purposes like this. Article 18 is repair of the Glendale Fire Station. If you've seen some of the wood siding and windows. And basically, Article 19 is our participation with a number of other towns in the rest of the river project to make sure that project goes in accordance with DEP regulations and public concern. Article number 20 is the purchase of a smaller F-150 truck for the highway department. 21 is the repair of the Stockbridge Beach roof and related costs. It's deteriorated. Article 22 is the purchase of handheld tools for the highway department. 23 is the painting and repair of the Interlaken Fire Station. 24 are interpretive signs, 10,000 for Ice Glen. That's a historic project. Article 25 is a shared 7,000 between three departments for a trailer. That's water, sewer, and highway. They'll all use the same piece of equipment. And Article number 26 would be improving the beach, public beach and swimming area. Those are what we would propose to use free cash for. Do we have any questions? John, would you step up, please?
Yeah, I think it was Article 18.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't bring that.
Go ahead.
Is that the Campusa Bog?
That is 17.
17.
Yep.
Just for your edification, Campusa Bog is being backed up by a beaver dam to the point where it's like, I don't know, maybe a foot below Route 7. And there was a beaver device that was installed there, which I believe that the Conservation Commission paid for 10 or 12 years ago. It got washed away during one of the storms last year. Mike's been out there to see it. 50,000, let me back up. Essentially, Campusa Bog is a mat. It's a floating vegetative mat. And when the surface of that water goes up, it rips the roots of that mat out of the bottom of where they grow from. And I highly encourage this, but I don't question the $50,000. I'm just not too sure that a beaver, what they call a beaver deceiver device is going to cost $50,000.
Well, I think the point is several fold. I think we have gotten estimates for this,
Well,
Michael.
that is to do a hydrological study, not the
It's a study.
installation of the beaver deceivers itself. The beaver deceivers themselves are a smaller number, much smaller, $2,000 to install.
Yeah, is there anything on the books to get the beaver deceiver in there before my friend Skip Scoutman's house gets washed away by this raising water coming up from Campusa Bog?
There could be funds available for putting in a beaver deceiver.
From Natural Heritage?
It was brought up about that. We can talk about that after if you wish.
I mean, it's getting to the point where the bottom floor of his house is going to be underwater. And the beavers are back at it again. If you look at the corner of Lee Road and Route 7, you will see the beavers are back cutting down trees and building their dam back up.
Is that something that community preservation needs to look at, Michael?
I know conservation others.
Water, they'll do it. That's funny, water, they'll do that.
Okay, any other questions on the free cash that we have discussed up to this point? We're going to move on to the use of surplus funds from the sewer fund as well as the water operations reserve fund. Article number 27. Michael, you want to run through those?
All right.
There we go.
Article 27 is the DEP study, I&I study, $99,200. That is for the sewer. We have sewer surplus system expansion and update authorization. That is the loan, $96,963. We also have Article 29, which is the debt service first payment on the Pump Street project, $65,600. To see if Don will transfer from sewer surplus, again, $7,000. This is for the 1/3 cost of the trailer. Article 31 is the upgrade to the water and sewer billing software, $6,500. From water operations is a Lake Everett, Bethany and safety yield study, $22,000. Article 34 is water operations, the filtration water turbine installation. Turbidity meter installation, sorry, $20,000. DEP, Article 35 is the DEP master plan for the water system, $20,000. Article 36 is a pump as a turbine feasibility study, $10,000. And then from water operations is 7,000, their share of that trailer that's gonna be shared between 3 departments. And then Article 38 is the water share of the water and sewer billing software, $6,500.
Okay, may I say something? Just one comment. These last articles are, although we have to vote to appropriate these funds come from, in effect, from user fees. They've already been funded. They don't affect the amount that we have to appropriate.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on that? Article number 39 deals with a request for 20,000 from available overlay surplus. That's surplus that comes through the assessor for bad debts, people who have not paid, and we have a fund to deal with that. And basically, those monies are requested to perform appraisals and reevaluation of some of our facilities. Jim, I'm going to call on you to deal with the CPC articles. And I can start off with the first one if you like, Article number 40. One of the things that Patrick White has brought forward was an interest in developing an affordable housing trust. Like there is in Lenox and Great Barrington and other communities. Last year, we put aside $100,000 for this purpose. This year, Community Preservation has directed both $58,000 and $67,000 for this purpose. These monies would be used to restore, to develop areas like Pine Woods. There can be further development there. Heaton Court. We also have a number of properties that are currently in tax lien, which it takes a while to deal with that. But these could support a lot of the people that develop deteriorated housing so that we could get some young people and people, low income people that could participate in this town. So that's Article number 40, supported by the Community Preservation. Jim, CPC articles.
All right, there's a substantial number of them. We'll begin with Article 40. I'm going to go through them briefly. I'll go about 5 at a time and then see if there are any questions regarding them. All of these community preservation articles have been approved by the CPC, obviously. They've been approved unanimously by the planning board, by the select board, as well as the finance committee. So starting with Article 41, to see if the town will, on community preservation, to appropriate from the Historic Preservation Reserve Fund balance a sum of money to be used by the First Congregational Church for historic resource purposes to preserve and restore the entranceway and exterior. They're expected to, that request is expected to be $100,000. Again, that comes from the historic preservation. There are 3 areas that the community preservation funds can be used for: historic preservation, open space, and affordable housing. So Article 42 will deal with open space reserve fund, and it's to fund $85,000 for the Ice Glen invasive insect treatment that's for the old growth forest in Ice Glen. Article 43 is going to be from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund Balance, a sum of money for community housing purposes to be used by Pine Woods for the reconstruction of the driveway. That's expected to cost about $70,000. Article 44, coming from the Historic Preservation Reserve Fund balance. This is for the restoration of the concrete basin of the Cat and Dog Fountain. That's expected to be $40,000. 2, 3, 4. Article 45, Historic Preservation Reserve Fund balance again for the purpose of the renovation of the Glendale Fire Station. That's expected to be $17,500.
The point on that is part of that money comes from free cash, part of it from the historic purposes of community preservation, because it is a historic facility.
Are there any questions on those 5 articles?
Anybody? Thank you, Jim. Go ahead.
All right, Article 46, to see if the town, let's see, this is coming from the community undesignated fund balance, a sum of money for community housing purposes to be used by the Stockbridge Housing Authority, Heaton Court, for replacement of wood siding on buildings, A, C, D, E, and F, expected to be in the neighborhood of $33,529. Article 47, to come from the recreation, from community preservation undesignated fund balance for recreational purposes, a sum of money to be used by Laurel Hill Association for the revitalization of the Upper Balkers Woods. That's expected to be $23,176. Article 48, from the undesignated fund balance again, a sum of money to for the installation of a kayak canoe launch at the town beach. That's expected to be in the neighborhood of $20,000. Article 49, from the community preservation and designated fund balance for recreational purposes to be used for the installation of a kayak launch on the Housatonic River. That's expected to be $15,000. And this 5th one, coming from the fund for undesignated fund for historic resources purposes to be used by the Berkshire Scenic Railroad for the restoration of the apron, ramp, and electrical systems. That's expected to be $15,000. That's 5. Any questions on those? John?
Yeah.
Come up, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. On Article 49, the kayak launch on the Housatonic River, I remember us at Concom going through a whole bailiwick with a canoe launch down there. They can't use the canoe launch that we currently have?
Well, it's my understanding, I'm not sure, but I know that when that serious ice storm, flood came in the wintertime, it ripped the existing,
It damaged.
even though it wasn't, they had taken it out to preserve it, the ice came up in there and still damaged it. So I'm not sure, maybe someone on the, could tell us.
I can answer that.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
So the kayak launch was damaged during that ice storm, but also the following year we had low water conditions. The ramp was actually sitting in the air. And we removed the following year. And then between either running too high or too low, the ramp really hasn't done its purpose. So what's being proposed right now through Park and Rec is the installation right beside the bridge, having engineering look at actually putting more of just large stones so you could bring a kayak down to the water right in that area instead of having that metal launch out onto the river. So we'd have to have an engineering notice of intent and then design to do a launch. I think it's down in Housatonic. They have a similar launch where it's stone and you can bring a kayak down. You see them on the Green River, also up in Williamstown, those type of launches.
And I'm really unclear on the Berkshire Scenic Railroad, the restoration of a apron, ramp, electrical, what's
That's in the front of the railroad station. They basically,
quite familiar with?
yeah, well, they are going to use that facility for a lot of people coming and going for functions there.
Oh, it's
And
handicap.
yeah, part of it is for that, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Peter Strauss has his hand up.
Peter?
Yeah, thanks. For the kayak canoe launch at the town beach, the town and the SBA undertake a good deal of effort at the boat launch to guard against zebra mussels. And I'm wondering whether this is a launch only for kayaks and canoes that are stored at the town beach, or if it's for people bringing their kayaks and canoes to the town beach, whether there'll be any kind of zebra mussel safeguard.
It is for a launch for those canoes and kayaks that are stored at the beach. And it is to have the launch over to the side instead of launching through the actual swimming area. So once again, we'll be coming to the Conservation Committee about creating a small path through, and we are proposing to reuse the metal launch that was on the river up at the beach in order to have a launch out there.
Okay, Peter?
Yeah, fine. Although, watch out for the ice on the lake too.
Okay. Anything else before Jim continues? Jim?
Okay, Article 51, from the Open Space Reserve Fund balance, some to be used for Friends of Gould Metal for work at Gould Metals to preserve open space by removing invasive species, improve recreational walkways, tree work, and stone wall work. Expected request there is $12,750. There are 6 in this one before I'll ask for questions, okay? That'll complete them. The next one is from the administrative fund balance, a sum for Norman Rockwell Museum for the creation of a historic structure report. The expected request there is $4,999. Article 53 from the Historic Preservation Reserve Fund, for a balance to be used for Friends of Gould Metal for historic resources purposes to preserve the milk shed. Expected cost there is $2,900. Article 54 from the Historic Preservation Reserve Fund balance for the Stockbridge Library for the replacement of the shadow box, $2,713. Article 55 to appropriate from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund balance a sum of money for fiscal 23 CPC administrative budget.
Right, that's their budget.
Yeah, that's their administrative budget. That's expected to be $10,000. And the last community preservation article is to the Historic Resources Reserve, the Community Housing Reserve, and the Open Space Reserve for Community Preservation, anticipated fiscal 23 annual revenues, the minimum amount. This is where they're dividing the remaining money, which has to be divided equally into all 3 categories, and that would be to open space, historical preservation, and affordable housing. So that's expected to be $32,850 per category, so that money would be used in reserve for future funding articles. Any questions on those 6? Any hands up?
Any questions on anything that we've discussed thus far? Fortunately or unfortunately, next week, the meeting won't be quite as quick as this.
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Michael.
Bethel, I think it is.
Question?
A hand
Oh, is that
raised.
from me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, so my question is, since everything is divided on the CPC allocations, what is the total amount that's going to be requested this year? And how much will the balance be in the CPC fund after all the allocations are made?
Well, the balance, I think that, I'm not sure what the exact balance is. I'm not on the committee.
For you, if you do one thing.
Do you have that?
Yep.
I may have that.
We're going to be transferring 32,850 into each of the 3 categories. And I don't know, Michael probably has the allocations for each of the 3 categories with these articles.
Michael,
Just gotta open it up. I'm getting it. One
here's the
second.
chart. Do you want this?
No, I'm getting it.
Yeah,
One second.
okay.
Just
I
had
didn't
time.
mean to make it so difficult. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not a problem.
It's not difficult.
Just 1 second and I will have that for you.
They don't have to be equal. There's a minimum for each.
Well, it seems like there'll be like about 100,000 in the reserve that's being allocated 32, 30, 32, 32.
Right. So the
But I
30,
was-
the 32,000 is just the minimum we have to put in each category of money that we're getting next year. The total that we are proposing to spend is 587,000 out of the CPC funds. And we will have, next year, if we receive the same anticipated funds, even at the end of this year, we're gonna have 33,000 remaining in housing and affordable housing. We're gonna have 33,000 available in historic reserves, 39,000 in open space, and 314 in undesignated.
Okay, so it's still a nice balance.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then the only other question I had was, I know that the Stockbridge Bowl Association had allocated or given back to the town $25,000 towards improvement of the town beach. And have any of those funds, I don't know if there's a future warrant that we'll discuss tonight, being used for that purpose, for renovating the beach itself? I know that there's money coming out of the CPC that I heard. Just curious if we're using any of that 25,000.
We'll be using some money from the SBA towards some projects at the beach.
Right.
Right now, we're finishing up the parking lot improvements. And then we're gonna be doing some of the other improvements down there, and they have committed to using, I didn't think, I thought it was 18,000, not 25, but
Yeah, you're right. I think it is 18,000, correct,
Yeah.
Michael? Yeah.
Yeah. So we will be using that for further improvements at the beach, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else, anybody? There being no further questions or comments, I would call for a motion to adjourn the Babytown meeting and remind you all that next week, the 16th, Monday, 6:30 PM, the annual town meeting in the gymnasium of this building, and vote on the 17th, the following day.
So moved.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for participating. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.